Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Should Have Recorded That with Phil and
Adam.
Hey, Adam, how are you?
Hi, Phil. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm well this week. I'm well.
Are you?
I
I
am.
want you to be well.
I'm well. It's a bit. I mean, we talked about that, right? We were talking about it before. Like we're not really winding down, and for multiple reasons, we're not really winding down this. At the end of this
Yes,
school
we
year.
are not winding down. We are. We are what? We are crashing into the finish line.
Crashing into the. We're gonna roll full steam ahead over the finish line.
Yes.
No.
I think it's appropriate that we're feeling that way as educators, since this is Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you need that at the end of the year, right? You want that extra boost at the end of the year. And we're going to talk more about that later. But before we do, dear listener, please share, like, and subscribe if you are enjoying our conversations. If you enjoyed our conversation.
I don't, and I feel I'm a horrible podcast host because I'm just like shut down my social media unless I'm taking pictures of flowers. Yes, I just need less social media in my life. So it's entirely possible that one of our dear listeners has left us a comment on my Facebook, and I don't log into Facebook anymore. So if that's the case, dear listener, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We again, if you want to reach out to us, the best way and a guarantee that you're on the episode, leave us a voice message and we will put you on there. Unless you're cursing up a storm, and then maybe not. So
Yeah. Because we get so many of those profanity laced messages.
right.
Yeah.
But but anyway, today we do want to talk about Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yes. Sorry for those who are listening and not watching. I can't stop myself from yawning. But Phil, who is one influential educator from your past who you would like to highlight for appreciation?
I think that's a hard question.
It is.
I think it's
Of
a hard
course, there's
question.
more than one, right?
Yeah, definitely more than one, and especially like now that I am an educator, I appreciate all of the teachers I had even more.
Yes. How the tables are turned.
Yes. I really appreciate them more, and I think about that when I look at my students. When I look at the students, I'm like, and that's the thing. I think as a teacher, like realizing that it may not feel like they get it all the time, but you'll be surprised how much they actually do get.
And you'll be surprised by the things that they remember.
Mm-hmm.
That you were insignificant to you, but that
Right.
the students remember. Sometimes they forget the lessons you want them to remember, but they remember the lessons that you forget. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm reading this book on social emotional learning (SEL) in the music room classroom. And one of the things that was very interesting, he talked about I want to say primary interactions versus secondary. And I'm missing the second part of that term, but there's like primary interactions and secondary interactions. And so like basically primary is where I am teaching. And so I am being the teacher to the student. The secondary is where I'm teaching the student how to be a teacher. and
Okay.
and he was saying, and in the book he's saying that students gain way more from primary interaction than they do from secondary interaction. So they gain way more from watching you teach than they do from when you're consciously trying to teach them how to teach.
Yes, it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so true.
And I see, like I thought about that when I think about how you tried to structure, the core programs that you've led, right? That you want to be that pride. You want the students, and especially those that are there to teach choirs and to lead choirs. You want them to see that process as much as possible.
Yes, exactly. I think it's so important to model good pedagogy, not just talk about it.
Right.
But I mean, there are those who would say that our pedagogy in higher education needs to look fundamentally different than in primary and secondary education, and I think there are ways in which that is just undeniably true, but I want to show good process that applies to music education majors whenever I can.
Right. And I guess we can get back to the question, but I think, there are, in some ways, unless you're teaching, unless you're in the classroom with someone teaching elementary students, like that part is probably missing, right? Because you're not gonna get that experience in college.
Yes.
We don't bring 6-year-olds and 11-year-olds into the college classroom so in that way that does have to be very secondary, but as much as you can try to make that primary. Do you have a teacher that you want to highlight?
So you're copping out entirely? You're not going to name some great teacher in your life, Phil?
I'm gonna let you do it and then I'll do it. What about that? How about that?
All right. I am going to pay homage to Mary Chase. Mrs. Chase was my orchestra director.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't talk about the fact that I was in orchestra very often. I have not played in orchestra since I went to college. Life pulls us in different directions, and I wanted to focus on other areas of my musical education, so I stopped playing the violin when I went to college. But 4th grade through 12th grade, I was a violinist in the school orchestra. And Mrs. Chase was my violin teacher and orchestra director for that entire time. 4th grade through 12th grade. And I am just profoundly grateful for the attention that she gave me when I was a cute, sweet 4th grader, sure, but also when I was a insecure, pimply middle schooler, and also when I was a jerk, immature high school junior and senior. That she was a constant source of support, and I will be forever grateful for that.
Yeah.
All right, Phil. Now name someone.
I'm gonna name a group of people if I could. Not too broad of a group. Sorry. The thing I'm saying is really hard But I'm gonna name a group of people. This is the very very small group, not a big group, very small group. Um, I'm my dad, my grandfather, um, and the men that I grew up watching, um, in church, because
Mm.
I like I said, as now as an educator, I just see it so much, like what we were just talking about, that in so many ways we are teaching, whether you want to or not, you're teaching somebody something. um
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and I think watching those men growing up, for the good and the bad, um I draw on, um their energy, um right now,
Mm.
and their lessons, like, we'll talk more about this not later, but I so many of the skills that I have, I learned doing things around that church or working with my grandfather. um Even just the desire, or the desire to fix things. I've watched, my dad and my granddad do those things driving. My granddad, I think I shared this before. He drove, the
Mm.
church bus, and my dad took us. I remember one of my first, like, really successful times driving was on a trip. I don't know if I shared this before, but on a trip to California, we were in Texas somewhere, and my dad was like, "Okay, I had my permit, so I think I don't know how long I
Uh-huh.
drove in Texas, but that was one of my first, times driving, for a very long time, and so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think that
That wasn't so hard, was it?
it was not. It wasn't. Let me ask you. Let's go on to another question. What was a memorable lesson that you really didn't get until much later after the lesson was taught to you?
Hmm. Oh, Phil. I mean, true confessions. Question is on the show guide that we wrote,
Uh
and
huh.
I hadn't come up with an answer, and I had hoped that under the pressure of recording, I
It would
would
just
be
come to you.
inspired.
Uh huh. Well, why don't
But
I can?
my
I'll give an
brain is
answer.
not working.
I understand.
Okay,
I understand.
maybe
I'll give it.
that will inspire me, Phil.
Okay.
You'll inspire me. You always
Okay.
do.
Well, thank you. But I'm gonna. So with my dad, I remember, man, it kind of makes me emotional thinking about it right now. I remember when I went to college the first time. We sat in the lobby of. I think I may have shared this before. We sat in the lobby of, um the dormitory at Southern Miss, and my dad made sure I
Mm-hmm.
knew how to, um balance, um, a checkbook, basically right into a registry, all my
Yes.
transactions, and that was at more of that was a prehistoric time, but, um, but the thing is, yeah, I didn't really use it much when I was in college. I didn't use it as much as I should have. But later on, even now, I've appreciated, the idea of budgeting and planning, and that we talked about that before, right? With You just realize how much more you have when you really um, plan it out, and that was I remember, I can see it in my mind, the time he sat down before he dropped me off to leave, um, just kind of doing that with me, and so yeah.
Yeah. So
Your
you didn't
turn.
truly learn how to balance your checkbook then?
Well, I should say it like this because the thing is, it's one thing to know, but to really apply, like what's the saying? Like,
Okay.
you can have the
Yes.
knowledge, but it's not really wisdom until it's applied. It's not really useful until it's applied. And so I really didn't apply it into in those early years of college.
Hmm.
Does that
Okay.
help you?
That's good.
Okay.
That is.
Are you still trying to figure out an answer?
You know what? I
What's that?
will try. I will try to talk about Mrs. Chase since I talked about
Okay.
her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as a teacher myself, what I learned from her is that um, what I learned from her uh, is that content knowledge, as important as it is, cannot compare in importance to the model of personhood that an educator is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't get me wrong, it's really important that a teacher be an
Right.
expert in their field. Whatever their
They do
academic
become.
discipline is, they need to be highly competent.
Yes.
And it is even more crucial that a teacher be equipped with the tools of great pedagogy. They
Mhm.
must be a great pedagogue, great communicator, great with people, excellent skills to both encode and decode nonverbal signals. Um, Responsible. All of these things that make a great teacher. Organized. But those are things that we can and do measure, assess, teach in teacher
Mhm.
education programs. Something that cannot be taught is being a good person.
Mm.
Something that cannot be taught is that can only be modeled and prayed for
Mm.
is investing above and beyond the job description in the lives of your students. And that's what Mrs. Chase did. When I was in the 9th grade, yes, it was actually the summer after my 8th grade year, before my 9th grade year, that um, I had saved enough money to buy a violin. And Mrs. Chase, who lived like a half hour away, drove to my parents' farm, picked me up in her car. This probably wouldn't be possible in the 21st century, but back then that was okay for a teacher to pick up a student, and drove me to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, where there was a violin shop, and helped me try out all of the violins in my price range
Mm.
and helped me make a decision about which one to buy, which one I sounded best on, which one's tone matched my personality and my playing style. Now that is a great teacher. This was on summer. This was during the summer. She was off contract. And it certainly was not in her job description to pick me up in her own vehicle, drive me an hour and a half away, pay for her own gas, spend I don't know what day of the week it was, but spend the entire, morning and early afternoon with me, and then drive me home. That's a good person.
Mm.
And so that's a lesson that she modeled every day, that only in hindsight did I realize.
That's so beautiful.
Now,
That's
Mrs.
really
Chase
beautiful.
was a beautiful teacher.
Is she?
All right, Phil.
Hold on.
Oh,
Is
yes.
she still around? Do you know?
She retired. She actually retired after I graduated from high school.
Okay.
So, just she couldn't bear, after my class graduated, she just couldn't bear to keep teaching anymore. So she's retired, and I send her a birthday. Oh my word! I just realized I forgot to send her a birthday greeting this year because her birthday is in April. Okay, I will do that after we get done with recording this show. I'll send her 2021 birthday greeting. But she and her husband are traveling and loving their retirement.
Well, great. Well, I hope, if she doesn't listen to any of our other episodes, that maybe she would listen to this one. She sounds like a great teacher.
Yes.
Let me ask you this question. Like, in line with what you just said, right? It's personhood is something that really has to be, what you just say, modeled and prayed for. Like, what? Like, how? Try to think of my question. I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. When do you come to the realization that the student that you're sending to be a teacher is going to need a lot of prayer in that area? Or have you experienced that?
Okay. Well, I have not felt the need to disqualify a teacher candidate for that reason in my career yet. Okay. I do think most people who are drawn to education as a profession tend to be pretty quality individuals because
it's not a lot of money.
They're not going into it for the money.
That right? You gave up on that, right? I mean,
yes. So if you're going into teaching, it's because you love kids, you love whatever it is that you're going to teach. As a mentor to music education majors, they love music, an easy thing to love, and a lot of my students I have felt would be very successful in more lucrative careers if they so chose, but their calling it was to music education, and so if you're choosing to be a music teacher to impact the lives of children through a beautiful art form, you're probably a pretty good person.
Yeah, most of the time, I guess. Anyway.
In comparison to the general population, anyway.
Right. It's all relative.
Yes.
So, let me ask you this question. I hope this one is more easily answered. Do you feel appreciated as a teacher?
I do. Yes. There are days I don't. That is for sure. There are days I don't. But I think generally I do feel appreciated, and I just have the best students in the world. They realize that just like my feedback is important to them, their feedback is important to me. And my students at the college here just last week, 2 weeks ago, made me a video montage of how I've touched their lives, and they got me a gift bag with some helium balloons that said, one of them says "You're number one," and in the gift bag were treats for me to eat, and a dog toy because they know how much I love B,
That's
and 6 bottles of sparkling water.
great. Okay.
Since I am never to be found without my
Yes.
sparkling water.
From Wegmans, right? Was it from Wegmans or?
Of course. Where else would I buy anything edible?
I told someone, and I'm not gonna reveal their identity, but I told them that if you could, you would probably marry Wegmans.
Yes. 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 I had a student joke that I need to marry into the Wegmans family.
Oh yeah, you gotta figure that out. You gotta figure out how to do that.
Yes. Yes.
Figure out
Phil,
how
how
to do
about you? Do you feel appreciated as a teacher?
that. I do. I definitely do. I think I agree with you that there are times where you can just wonder, but in general, yes. Overall, yes. And I think it's moments like this where you kind of reminded. Because my school has been the parents, and I think especially this year during this time, they've been very appreciative of all of us teachers, and I think like this is my first full year with with the students that I have, and so over this year we have I've gotten more I have to be honest, like I've gotten more comfortable.
Yes.
Being a teacher and trying to be a person and as I am being a teacher, and just seeing them, and and all of those interactions. I think like for me, one of the best moments was when I've shared with, I think all of the students. Have I shared with all of them that Wendy and I are gonna have our first baby? And so they were very excited. The kindergartners today, I think I may have derailed my class partly because of that. And even the 4th, 5th graders, they were suggesting names. Wendy had suggested a name, and so when I went to school and they suggested the same name, I was like, maybe I should reconsider the name that I wasn't all that keen on. So yeah. So yeah, those are some great moments of appreciation and that personhood you're talking about.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think to all of the educators listening to this podcast, just hear us when we say thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for the work that you do.
Yes.
On this Teacher Appreciation Week, we show our appreciation, but we also strive to show our appreciation every day for the invaluable work you are doing educating the future leaders of our society.
Yes. Thank you.
Shall we move into final segments, Phil?
Let's do it.
All right. What is your current event for Current Events Corner this week?
My current event is kind of niche to this week, but there is this podcast that I kind of stumbled upon last year, and I really stumbled upon it through YouTube, called the Budden Podcast. It's kind of a hip hop kind of focused podcast. And but what's the current event is that there was kind of a falling out between the co-host. The podcast is actually named for one of the co-hosts, and there was a little dispute with the other 2 co-hosts. What was, again, and that's not even the most current. The current event is that they've now kind of come back together because stopped recording together, and now they've come back. And what was very interesting for me is just them listening to them process, kind of reconciling. And I say that in present tense because it's still going, it's ongoing. Even as I was listening to them talk, they're still trying to figure out, trying to figure out the situation. And one of the things that was interesting, and I think we've talked about this with friendship, that, because these are all men, that like men need to figure out how to talk to each other about what's going on with them, in their relationships. Like that was one of the things. And then one of the guys expressed this kind of frustration with how people, because they were falling out, people were kind of like cheering, like, oh, I knew y'all wasn't gonna, I knew it wasn't gonna last. I just kind of felt to myself like, man, what I think I know I have the ability, the capacity to be that jealous, to be like, yeah, I knew that wasn't gonna last, right? But to not want to be that person. And I mean, these gentlemen, I don't really know them personally, so I didn't have that. I was more interested in just to see what would happen. And so I was really glad to see them back together, and I just thought it was very very nice to hear them, saying men need to have more of these conversations where we talk about our feelings, what's going on. These guys, they were friends, but just not really like digging into those emotions and how they deal with them. So yeah, that was kind of long, but that's my current event.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Phil. I'm gonna have to take a listen.
Yeah, check it out. It's right at the beginning.
Yeah.
What about you?
My current event is just the headlines the last few days about how America's the rate of vaccinations is going down, and our supply is now outstripping demand, and I do worry. About that, and in my capacity as a professor, I tell my students to consult their doctor and talk with their family and make the decision that is best for their health. But in my capacity as a podcast host, I'm going to implore everyone who is eligible to protect themselves and their communities from this virus and get vaccinated for COVID-19.
I'm gonna show a thumbs up. I'll be full transparency. I have not got vaccinated yet. So
Well, I heard on on NPR this morning that the pandemic is now officially over in Florida, so.
Oh, right. Of course. Yes, it was.
Yes, your
been
governor
announced.
has lifted all restrictions. So, Phil, will you please get vaccinated? Because you live around a lot of crazy people.
I will eventually get vaccinated.
You could get vaccinated tomorrow, my friend.
Okay.
You live in the United States of America. You just need to go to CVS or Walgreens or your local Publix pharmacy. Everywhere has the vaccine now.
I hear you.
You live in a position of extreme privilege. Not many people on this planet can simply walk into their pharmacy now and get the COVID vaccine, but you can, and you should.
That's true. And I think we should be praying for India. And I mean, I think everybody, if you unless you're living under a rock, you've probably heard about the situation in India, and so we want to be prayerful for that country and what's going on there right now. And I hear you. So I'm gonna work on that.
Protect yourself, Phil.
I will. I'm always wearing a mask. I'm always wearing a mask. So I'll do the next step. So what did you learn this week?
I I'm not sure if I learned this, but I really appreciated that when asked for um, a teacher who had a profound impact on you, you mentioned your family members,
Hmm.
who I don't believe are in the teaching profession,
Right.
are they?
No, nobody in my
Right.
family is a
But
teacher.
they were powerful models to you growing up,
Yeah.
and they taught
Hmm.
you a lot. And I
Hmm.
think that was really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I didn't know that you played the violin for that long from fourth to 12th.
I know I keep it secret.
I because
Oh,
I'm like I've heard you say at least 2 or 3 times that you did play, that you attempted, but like you played that long. Why do you not still play the violin?
I played it for a long time and I was decent.
Uh
Um, but life is busy.
yeah.
Um, and I made that decision. I don't regret that decision, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, if only God had made the day 25 hours long, maybe I could have continued playing.
Yes, maybe you could have gotten in an hour of practice or 30 minutes or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, great.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order, Phil?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, then, dear audience, I will say bye for now.
Adios.